varying sizes. It can be more interesting if there's varying sizes. Well, it'll be interesting. How many people have work in like an Agile environment right now? Okay. How many people work in Scrum specifically and no Scrum? How many Scrum Masters do you have? Scrum Masters, what do you guys do? Developers or project managers? Project manager, I know you're a large corporation or like a PMO kind of thing, or like... Sorry? What's that? 50 people. 50 people. So, my name is Bob Gower. I work for a company called Rally Software. My job is to sort of help companies transition from things that don't work, hopefully, to things that do work, hopefully, right? You know, and the observation is that how many people work in sort of a traditional waterfall, what you would call a waterfall environment right now, like using like Gantt charts and Microsoft Project and all of that? Does anybody work in that?
Just shifting to Agile from waterfall.
You're shifting?
From waterfall to more of an Agile.
You're shifting to Agile now. So you're in that kind of awkward transition mode. Yeah. That's what I do. I come in and insert myself into that process often. How many people like feel like you don't have a process? Like there's actually like no really very well clearly understood process. Anybody? No? Yes. And that's my experience. So my background is I kind of grew up professionally in the startup world. I was in Silicon Valley. I worked for 3 or 4 different startups. I was a UX designer kind of early on in my career. Actually, I was a newspaper designer very early on in my career. I used to be the design director of the San Francisco Examiner. Fun. But it was really fun because, you know, you started designing newspapers and you like see your work as trash. Like there was something oddly satisfying. You wind up feeling like, I designed that page. So I became a sort of a UX designer. And I was talking to Barb from Macadamia this morning and I said, like, yeah, like we didn't know what the hell we were doing. Like it was just like we just were inventing stuff. And then I made in an act of youthful indiscretion, I went back to school and got an MBA. And while I was in school studying, you know, I really got fascinated by this thing called systems theory, right? Like let's look at something as a whole system rather than sort of chopping it up into little parts. And the reason I fell in love with Agile is because I started seeing Agile as this way of, this is where systems theory is where the rubber hits the road. It's the most tactical, sort of tactile application of systems theory that I can possibly imagine. And then when a friend of mine said, hey, I'm funding a startup on my credit cards, do you want to manage the product for me? I said, sure. You know, why not? And so we said, hey, let's try this Agile thing. And boy, did we mess it up. We messed it up for months and months and months. We just got it all wrong. And eventually we hired some people who had some experience because Agile is very cultural. And so we hired these guys who kind of knew what Agile felt like and what it should actually kind of sort of, the gestalt of it, whatever, you know. But we got this idea, we got the idea of it, and we eventually sort of got it right. And I moved on to a couple other startups to help them sort of manage their systems. And eventually what I found was that my focus was so much more on how we were doing things than it was on what we were building. In other words, my title was product manager, but I didn't really care about the product or the customer. What I cared about was the development team. What I cared about was how we were doing things. And you know, how many people are like super satisfied with your jobs? Like it's like you like really look forward to going to work each day. Don't worry, your boss is in the room. All right. How many people really like kind of, you know, on Sunday evening it's sort of that dread sets in? Any of you? Okay. One honest person in the room. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I mean, what I really care about is I care about having work. You know, like having our work lives actually make sense, which means that we manage a lot of really smart, intelligent, you know, creative people who are strongly opinionated. I think that's probably the first in most of this room, right? And we sort of coordinate our effort in order to produce something of value that people love, that they pay us for, so that we can kind of keep coming to work each day. And hopefully there's a sort of beautiful, virtuous cycle that develops. Unfortunately, most of our organizations seem to be caught in these sort of like, what I would call vicious cycles, right? One common one I see is that we have a lot of bugs. A lot of bugs make our software, our code brittle. It's hard to work on. So our team is pushing us out the door, you know, and then so you're pushing like bad stuff out the door, which just makes the code worse, which makes the customer, you know, like, and it's these downward spirals. Anybody ever worked in a system like that? Not now, of course, but you know. So what Scrum is essentially an attempt to do is an attempt to sort of heal the development side of things. It's not, it's very much what Steve was talking about, which is like, it's like the tactical side. Like, how do I actually get stuff out the door in a way that feels good and that actually gets good stuff out the door? And one of the things that the sort of primary I would say, observation that I would say is that the people that do the work are going to plan the work, right? That we're going to ask the people that are actually on the line who are making the work, like, we get to, say how long it's going to take us to do something. It's not our boss doesn't tell us how long it's going to take us to do something, but we get to decide. And we also sort of collaborate on quality. We decide when something is done, and it doesn't go out the door until it's done to our collective agreed-upon standards of quality. So what I'm going to do today is I could spend all day long talking about Agile and Scrum, but I think it's much more fun to actually make something happen. So for right now, these are our work products. Okay, so I've asked people to make a bunch of newspaper wads. Okay, and so we're going to create a little bit of a system. You guys willing to play a game with me? You willing to have some fun? Like, get up out of your chairs and maybe do something. All right, so it's I find it far easier to actually talk about what Scrum is after we do this. And so what I want to do is play a little bit of a game, and then we're going to see where we go. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the projector working, so it's going to take me a little bit longer to set up, so I'm going to have to write the rules down, but trust me, there's just very, very few rules. So the first one is that you guys are all one team. For the sake of this exercise, we are all one team. I'm just going to paraphrase this, because my writing is terrible, you're not going to be able to read it anyway, but we are all one. So we're all one team. We're all in this together. Our object of the game is to process, and I'll thank you not to talk about my spelling, not to comment on it, process the most work in the time allotted. So that's our object of our game, right? It's the object of most development teams, right? So we want to get the most work done to a certain level of quality that we can get done in the time that we've got. Now, the work, when we say process the most work, we have to define what we mean by done. So what I mean by done is that when a ball arrives back at the start point, so let's establish a start point right now. Let's collect all of the balls. So let's just make the start point right there. You guys just kind of like toss them up or. All right, great. So as we get going, maybe somebody can kind of help gather it all together. But we're going to have it all like kind of in one point up here. Thanks a lot.
By the way, soccer was one of our
Oh, okay. So this will be our start point. We'll bring all these together as we get going. So we want the balls to arrive back at the start point after it's been touched by everyone on the team. All right, so that means that everyone on the team is going to have to touch the thing, and then it comes back at the beginning. Okay, so and you get the idea. Like, we're sort of simulating a system where we got to pass work off, and we're going to pass work off through the entire team. So everyone touches each. I'm going to add a little bit of a constraint here. As the balls go, so you're going to get this idea. We're going to create a little pipeline. But as you create this pipeline, the balls can't touch each other, right? So it's not like I can wad 3 up together and like hand them to somebody, right? So the balls don't touch. The other thing that I'm going to say is that the ball's going to have to do a little bit of airtime, right? Airtime is, between me and, Max here. Yeah. Like it has to pass through the air. So it can't do, can you just put it directly in my hand? It can't do that. We do that, but then we're sort of disqualified. So these are just sort of the constraints of our technical system inside which we sit. Let's see. Airtime. Yeah, I think that's about it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of time to plan how you're going to do it. So you're all on the team, right? So we're going to do this we'll probably do about 5 iterations. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to want an estimate for how many things you're going to be able to process during the first iteration. I'm also going to record the actual, so we're going to be able to see how well you thought you were going to do against how well you did. And then we might also, if we feel like it, we might keep track of what I think of as bugs, right? So bugs would be defined as balls would hit the ground and don't get picked back up again, right? So you can recover the bug. You can choose to repair the bug, or you can choose not to as you go. Does this all make sense? We're going to be 2-minute iterations, all right? So we're only going to have 2 minutes to do this. And then I'm going to give you a minute in between each iteration to plan the next one and kind of figure out, hey, what worked and what didn't work. And by the end of the 5 iterations, I don't know what's going to happen. It could be that it's just going to be a whole cluster of something. Or it could be really, really fascinating. So we'll just see what we learn. Is everyone willing to play?
Yeah.
All right, you got one yeah. Come on. Yeah. All right, good. Can I have an amen? Right? Okay. All right, great. So the first thing you have right now is I'm going to pull out my little timer here, and I'm going to time 1 minute to plan your first iteration. At the end of that 1 minute, I'm going to ask for an estimate about how many you think you're going to do, and then I'm kind of a taskmaster. My role is to kind of just keep time and write things down here. And also, I can explain to you. So, first off, are there any questions about the rules of the game? Have I been clear about kind of what the rules and the constraints on our system are? No, please.
Yeah, so everybody needs to touch the ball before they go to the end? Or?
Yeah, so it needs to start at the same place and end at the same place. And then in between, it passes through everybody. Everybody in the entire system touches that ball.
So how do you keep track?
That's a very good question, and I'm going to leave that up to you guys. So, but very astute. After the first iteration, often I say, "How many did you do?" And they're like,
It's really good one through.
"Do we have any more newspaper, by the way?"
That's ambitious.
Is this one ball?
It looks like enough balls.
You can have as many balls active in the pipeline as you want, right? As much work in progress as works for you guys. So that's what this is. We got to figure out. And I should, because I think contained in your question as well, balls can be reused, right? So they can pass through the pipeline multiple times, but they get counted each time they pass through the pipeline.
Is there any other equipment you're allowed to use?
Oh, you know what? You just kind of highlighted one. No. But there is one other rule that I knew I was forgetting. That's very, very, very important. This is like the most important rule. Yeah, is that you cannot pass the ball to your neighbor. Your neighbor is defined as the person who is on your immediate right or immediate left. Alan and I'm sorry, what's your name? Richard. Alan and Richard are neighbors. Max and Richard are neighbors. Alan and Max are not neighbors. Max and I'm sorry, what's your name? Max and Shanta are not neighbors. Does that make sense? So, yeah. So if I was, and I'm even still, I'm not a neighbor. All of a sudden now I'm being punished. We have to stay where we are. No, that's not a rule. All right. So you have. I'm sorry.
Organize a labor pool.
Somewhat linear.
You have 1 minute to plan your. What's it?
Is the neighbor
No.
He's standing here, it's not waiting.
Yeah. It's kind of hard to pass. You could probably make that.
Yes.
I've never really thought of it that way. Yeah, we'll give that a try. Anyway, you got 1 minute to plan your first iteration. You're all on team. Again.
One start from back and one start from front.
Straighten out the line.
Let's get all the balls in one spot. Just so we have a very clear. I want a very clear start place. A very clear.
You're going to come back the opposite way.
Who's opting out of being on the team? Are some people just going to observe? Is that the way it's going? How many do you think you'll do? How many do you think you'll process? In 2 minutes. All right, Sean just the call. So it's 11. You have 2 minutes to begin.
Okay, oh, so
There's no
Ready?
yeah.
Ready?
Yep. Go, bus.
Come on.
Now I know what's
30 seconds.
How many bucks?
No, I know.
And stop. All right. How did you do? How many did you get?
Well, it's full.
What's three?
I don't see any. I see 3 at the end point. Did they go through the circle? No.
Yes. Somebody brought those over here.
All right. So there's okay. And what's all this in the middle here? Are these all? All right. So our book rate's very high.
But then how much?
So hold on just a second. I'm going to give you guys a chance to kind of plan in just a second, guys. So we have 3 good ones essentially, but we're not really even sure if those are good because one is that I saw them come back and they were actually touching when they came back from that end. So we can't have them touch, right? So they have to come back without touching. And then we have a huge defect right in the middle. And I saw the lines sort of being kind of bold into the middle, but they're not making it all the way back. So we have some problems in our system. I'm going to give you 1 minute to kind of work on those problems, see what you can do. Okay, so take a minute and figure what you guys get
Yeah, circles.
I think
we did that right.
Still together.
So let's do it and then circle. So this line here, we go around, back to back. This circle around.
You guys would like
The inner circle. Face outward.
That's right.
Face outward. Face outward. That line, make a circle facing us. Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
This line here, make a circle face outward. Face outward. Face Face him. This is the same circle as you. Everybody that was on this line, face outwards in this circle. So come this way, make a circle, and then face this way. And then that line comes around this way and face us.
But
I think you guys are pretty good. So how many do you think you're going to do this time?
I don't know what's going on.
You don't know what's going on?
So we've got it back.
All of this side here. No, face your back in. Put your back in this way.
Everybody.
And then that line. So guess what? You finish this book and you're not.
Okay, so that's
All right.
that's right.
2 minutes. Begin.
Yeah, now that is fine. That's it. This is the starting point for I'm done. Lovely. Lovely.
Awesome.
30 seconds.
You got 4 done?
Yeah.
Oh, repeat production. No, that's what it is.
No, they complicated.
And stop. How many do?
8, 10, 12.
15. Alright, so and how many bugs are kind of left on the floor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That's less than a lot.
Yeah, it's less than a lot. Yeah, you've actually gone to it's actually a percentage you're completed now, which is actually rather than your completed being a percentage. Which is the way you want to go. So now you have a minute to see if you can improve this system. I think you guys are doing pretty good. Pretty dramatic improvement, but let's see if we can do an equally dramatic improvement next time. So 1 minute.
Why improvement is while trying to try to join the hands are up.
Yeah, there we go.
Let's reduce the bugs, yeah.
Does someone want to keep time on the team so that we...
I think it's too much.
I think too much.
I will keep time. I'll call time every 30 seconds.
Just one last.
Do we have equal number of people on the outside that we do on the inside?
Last.
Is that, yeah, okay?
Everybody, last point, friends, don't lose focus.
If we get a bug and we recover it, just stop it. Recover it.
Is that,
You're welcome to make any bug decision you want to. So
Just say bug, or if you drop on a bug and the whole line stops, pick it up.
Oh, no.
Just keep
You don't want to
focusing.
stop this line. It's
Just-
going to be a mess.
Just please focus on the next delivery from
How many will you do this time? So what's your name? Paul, how many will we do this time?
We will do 22.
22. You have 2 minutes. Begin.
always like that.
Lawrence. Max. Lawrence. Max.
You want to say your
Hey.
How Lunchtime.
1 minute, sorry, I reached my.
Don't talk, he's got guys, listen to how that goes.
Don't pressure, don't pressure.
Make it faster.
One at a time.
Faster, guys.
Awesome.
Be close.
John.
Have to be close.
30 seconds.
One more money. Good. You have time
Okay,
to
Max,
vote.
let's see if we can get the rest of the actually.
That's a rude class is great.
Almost lost that one.
They're so well planned.
Done.
Whoever did that.
15 seconds.
Grab the bug, grab the bug. Keep him going, keep him going. Keep him going. From where they are, keep them going from where they are. We have time to get the buttons out of the way.
And stop. How many do?
Wow.
90%.
We started all of them. Okay? We're gonna have that.
Now, I will say this, just one thing to emphasize. Balls can be reused, so if it finishes it can be cycled back into it. So you might want to adjust your system a little bit to accommodate for that. You have 1 minute.
Okay, quickly, 1 point. Quickly, these two, these.
Okay, I noticed that. I can feel a couple of them, so I did.
Yeah,
Okay.
they can come back, and please treat them as if they are eggs. So just, they should be in the air just for a millisecond, that's it. That guy is receiving it, another guy is getting it. You can do that, you'll have 0 point.
We have a question. Are we losing time from the last person to touch them? Going the pile? He's dropping something.
Okay, guys?
Is there anything else that we're missing?
How can you develop a system so the balls can be reused, Dan? You can
You
keep
need a
counting.
counter with you. You need a counter with
We have a
zero.
Yep.
Well, we can reuse the balls. Yes. Yeah, but you also want to keep count as well, so how can you do that?
Size of balls. What happens if there's a bug, I just slow
You
down.
If we get to the end of it, we'll call done.
Yeah.
Pick up a bug in front of you and keep it going. Don't throw it back to the start. Pick it up and just keep it going.
How
Then we
many?
have a chance.
Ruby, how many are you going to do?
29? 29.
Even do 38. And this time we're going to do it.
38. All right, 38 it is. You have 2 minutes. Yes.
Sit closer.
Alright? You're getting softer as you go along.
No bar.
Just drop it.
Zero bar. Zero bar.
90 seconds.
I want zero bar.
Pick it up.
Catch it like a cricket ball. Yep. Use both hands, no gloves. That was really on the. That was really tough. 11. Really bad code. This one's while there's something right. It's flying.
These are eggs. These are eggs.
1 minute.
You're handing over eggs.
14. 15.
There you go.
Thank you.
Go.
We're going, John.
We have zero bar.
5, 20.
35 seconds.
21.
More.
22.
Now we have experience.
Yeah, you're not.
Done. 26.
Okay.
There's no bar.
We're done again.
We have zero bar. Zero bar.
Keep count. From 30.
Today here.
Here we go. They were happy for.
Keep going.
And stop. 34 is the total. So 38 was our estimate, so we're slightly under, but we're still in the ballpark. And then what's the defects? Was there any? Two. All right, great. So you have 1 more minute. Final rate. 1 more minute for a final rate.
I don't think the bunching up is working because too many people are bunching it up. We're losing time doing that.
But we had no bugs. Zero bugs.
Some errors.
You can resign.
We learn from it.
By the time it gets over here, it's like such
We need them like machines.
One minute.
Faster.
When we should turn it.
Keep going. Faster!
And stop. Pretty flat. All right, let's grab our chairs and talk about this.
Are there any bugs? 2 bugs? No?
So
A lot of management
we
sitting
just
around.
developed an iterative system that produced that did a dramatic improvement in performance. I mean, if you look at this, right, just in our actual, right, didn't know to 15 to actually triple what our first iteration was, right? So the idea behind Agile, and I often like kind of spend time teasing this out, but I know we don't have a lot of time to kind of unpack all of this. So I just want to like give you a little bit of actual Scrum, like what Scrum actually is, and also sort of the why. This process to me demonstrates the why. And the why is that the more of these we do, like you can see you got to 45, how many of you think that the next one you probably would have done better?
Margin.
All right. How many before you leveled out? How many of these things before you started leveling out?
By 7.
Probably by 7 or so. Yeah, we find actually that teams that were transitioning to Scrum by their sort of 3rd to 5th, sometimes their 6th or 7th iteration, depends. Sometimes there's a little bit of performance dip in the middle because anytime you transition to a new process, right, you're going to, sometimes things kind of dip a little bit. But the idea is that the teams begin to level out, but actually there's some data out there that indicates the Scrum teams for 2 to 4 years actually will continue to improve their speed, improve their quality, improve their output, and I think also improve sort of like the way people work together. So I could have done this right in a way where I could have like sort of picked, I could have told you what to do, right? Which would you have, how many people would have sort of like left the room if I started telling them how to do things? I would have left the room, right? You know, like if I didn't in the audience and somebody says, all right, you stand here, you stand here, you stand here, you stand here. You guys did come up with a very optimal system very early on. Some teams I do this with, it takes them like the third iteration before they even think about moving things back. But this is sort of, you know, like you guys, everybody seems to arrive at sort of the same process. But the trick is that we want people to own the process by which they produce stuff. That it's much more resilient. And also, how often do things change in our environment as well, right? So what if I had brought in a whole bag of bowling balls all of a sudden and said, okay, now this is the work you're processing. You might have had to make dramatic changes in your process, but you would have also known how to change. So one of our goals in Agile and Scrum is actually to create learning organizations. We want organizations that get better and better and better and better over time. One of our observations is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kathy Sierra's sort of framework, but you know, like a lot of people sort of like they'll try a new process and then they'll drop out. Some people will get over what we call the suck threshold. They'll stop sucking, and you know, it'll get pretty good, but they'll sort of level off, and eventually they'll sort of peter out. We call these people amateurs, right? People that sort of say, we know how to do things, and this is how we do things around here. We're always going to do things the same way around here. The people we call experts are actually people who are sort of kind of continually learning, continually striving, continually trying to find new ways to do things. One of the things Steve talked about this morning was the importance of retrospecting. You know, that the importance of sort of looking back and saying, how did we do? And how might we do better next time? And you notice that I built that in, right? So in that time period, we had those retrospective, you know, periods built in. My assumption would be that had I given you sort of the entire like 15 or 20 minutes or whatever to just sort of process as many as you possibly could and just say go, that you wouldn't have processed this many, nor would you have gotten such a comfortable system. It was those retrospectives that were built in that were crucially important to you, you know, to the improvement in the process. Also, likewise, had I given you, say, you know, this many, you know, like 10 minutes to plan the perfect iteration, and then say go, that your that your one iteration would not have been nearly as good, right? So that we learn by doing, we actually get our hands dirty. So Agile is a very, what we would call sort of action bias, right? It's like, let's get something done, let's self-organize and collaborate in order to do it, and let's simply just sort of measure how well we're doing. And Kanban, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kanban, is very, very measurement focused. Scrum is a little more process heavy. You know, and both are sort of, I find most teams I work with kind of, you know, pick and choose. I always say like every install of Agile is custom, right? That we want to, you know, sort of figure out what works in our environment. So Scrum, basically the idea is that what you would do is you would do a lot of these sort of iterations. Most of the times it's 2 weeks. That's what I tend to recommend, somewhere between 2 and 4. The challenge is the more weeks you do, the fewer opportunities to retrospect you have. So, you know, the difference between a 2-week and a 4-week iteration is the difference between getting to retrospect 24 times a year or 12 times a year, essentially, right? And so if you really want your process to kind of continually improve and to continually, you know, move towards expertise, the shorter the iteration, better. Now, if you go to a 1-week iteration, we find there's a lot of overhead in planning an iteration and retrospect. You know, like it gets a little bit hectic. So I tend to really like 2-week iterations myself. At Rally, with our own development teams, we've actually moved to a continuous flow environment, so we actually don't do sort of time-boxed iterations anymore, just a little more of a Kanban way of doing things. But the idea is that you sort of, at the end of each iteration, the stuff that we produced is actually potentially releasable software. That these balls, these items that we're working with, it's not something like add a line to a add a column to your database, right? It's not a task. There may be many tasks associated with this. We'll break this into tasks. But this is a piece of value. This is something, we talk about vertical slices. So if you think of a traditional sort of 3-tiered web application, right? You have your sort of UX layer and your database or, you know, stitched together with your logic, right? So we would try to go all the way through. We would try to provide an actual capability to our customer. Think about a word processor as like the ability to type a word and have it appear on the screen. Right? Now, it may be that we have to gather up an awful bunch of these things to actually, from a marketing standpoint or a business standpoint, to have them saleable. But our idea is that what we're going to do is we're going to work on the highest priority, the most valuable things first, and then at regular intervals, we're probably going to call for a release. So we may not release at the end of each iteration, but eventually we're going to have enough stuff gathered together, and we're going to work on the most valuable stuff first. Again, what Steve sort of described this morning about he just sort of gave a forced rank priority. This is the most important. This is the least important, and then there's a forced rank in between. There's only one number 1, one number 2, one number 3. Right? It's not like P1, P2, P3, but it's not like these big buckets. You ever do that? And everything becomes a P1 somehow. Everything becomes urgent and the highest priority. People start, gaming that system. But if you're force ranking things and working from a backlog where it's you're just pulling things off the top and feeding them into the system, eventually you sort of gather up enough stuff that you can release. Now, there's a lot of practices and things that we have teams, we don't have time to go into today, that teams sort of go into here, right? There's the daily stand-up, there's sort of backlog grooming, there's iteration planning, and all of these things. And then there's also a sort of a series of practices around what makes a good backlog item versus what makes a bad backlog item. But this is the general sort of idea of Scrum. The other thing is that once we pull something into an iteration, it's sort of sacrosanct, right? Once the team is committed to doing something, we agree as product managers, and that's always been my role as a product manager, is I'm not going to change that unless something is really, really urgent, unless the system is down and something's happening. Because I only got 2 weeks, it's not that crucial, right? It's not, and what this means is it's sort of both disciplined and loose. It means over here I can move stuff around. I can say, hey, market conditions change, I learned something new, I can move this one up to the top, but I'm not affecting the team. I'm not going in there and sort of derailing the team and asking them to switch context all of a sudden, unless there's some huge production-facing bug that's causing massive failure or a lot of customer complaints. In which case I say, okay, we'll bring this thing in, but we'll do a quick renegotiation and we'll decide what we take out. So it's this sort of so Agile at its core, I think, is really this idea that we can be really, really flexible over here, but really, really disciplined over here. And there's I think, a kind of very, very undeserved, or perhaps deserved, depending upon the system that you've seen, but Agile has kind of a reputation as being, there's a Dilbert cartoon. You just start coding and complaining, right? You don't plan anymore. Anyone ever heard this? Everyone heard Agile, we don't plan, we don't document, we actually do. We plan continuously, we document religiously, and it's a very, very disciplined process. But it allows for this extreme flexibility on the front end, so we can, again, have the information that we learn when we release something flow immediately back into our backlog and help us prioritize our backlog better. So that sort of that dynamic tension between producing something and then managing the product. I think I have 2 minutes for questions, so I'm happy to take it.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Kanban, can you just say a few words about that?
So Kanban is, so here we worked in a really strict time box, like I said, in 2 minutes, right? Or in 2 minutes we're gonna stop and count. Kanban is a little more of a continuous flow. It's more you count continuously, and you do retrospectively at regular intervals, but it's not like this strict, I wouldn't ask you for an estimate about how much you think you're gonna get done in a certain time. Kanban has much fewer controls on it, and I find it works better for sort of sysadmin systems, systems where you're responding a little more dynamically to what's going on, and it also requires a little more, teams to be a little more mature in terms of their comfort working together. Kanban, K-A-N-B-A-N. It comes with a Toyota production system.
During your quick sprints, how do you break up sort of when a feature should be complete during QA or sort of backup phase? What are your different milestones of these?
So that's up to the team, and one of the things we do is we don't really draw a huge distinction between QA and development. Everybody collaborates together to produce quality code, and there's collective code ownership between QA and dev. And I've even worked with teams where we eliminate the role. Everybody is, this person might be a little bit better at writing, working in the test harnesses or whatever, and this person might be a little bit better at, working in the Java PHP or whatever. But we talk about T-shaped people often. You have your discipline, you have your own sort of depth, but we can broadly jump in and support each other as need be. What we try to avoid, the tendency is well, I've done my work. Are you done yet? Or development saying it works on my machine. Don't find it. There's sort of dev and QA get kind of angry at each other, which is crazy, right? Because we want them to work together to create really high quality stuff. So what we say is like, how do we work best? And one, we may be moving to sort of a test-driven development where QA actually gets the stuff first and writes the test, but then, then the developer then writes the code that helps, the test pass. Or, even test-driven development where you have two people sitting side by side, one writing the test, one writing the code.
Well, question. How does design fit into your?
We don't design. Actually, I was a UX designer for a long time, and I have a real passion for it. But it's the same way that architecture, or perhaps database programming kind of fits into it. And what we begin to do is we begin to design more frameworks. We begin to design things that are much more flexible, so we can add to them over time, which is really the reality that we live in, right? We live in a world of living applications, right? Our applications are never done. We may get tired of them eventually, and we may retire them. But usually we're going to be adding functionality continually to our thing. So what we ask is we ask our designers to begin sort of changing their mindsets and the way they work together. And actually I had a conversation with Barb this morning about this from Macadamia. And unfortunately her session is happening right now, so I was looking forward to sitting in on it. But it can be a challenging place to fit design in, and we can. So I've seen it work very, very effectively. So unfortunately, that's all the time I have. I just got the I thank you very much. I probably will do an afternoon session on the difference between a product manager and a product owner, which is more, a product owner is sort of a scrum role, and product manager is again more of a traditional role, and sort of how those two roles interact. I've played both roles, and so it would be more of an open discussion. Please come if you can, vote for it, so it gets in the schedule. And if you have any questions, I'll be at the rally table during breaks and stuff, and I'm around. Thanks so much. Thank you.